I remembered today a conversation I had with a friend about the Oscars in 2015, after Birdman had won Best Picture and Best Director. We were essentially talking about the role of Alejandro Iñárritu and how good Birdman was, considering that all the individual aspects of Birdman were astonishing. The concept of the film being cheated to be one long take is not only a massive feat of cinematography, but also editing. The score adds tons of character to the film, the screenplay is great, and the performances are stellar across the board. So if everything individual about the film is so good on its own merits, then what is Iñárritu's job in the movie? So this video is kind of an answer to that question, and then some discussion on how I feel that impacts a director's ability to cultivate a style and adapt that style to different genres. So first, what do I think the role of a director is? A director is the person who coalesces the different aspects of a film into a coherent tone and atmosphere, and works with the different people involved to achieve this. Quentin Tarantino is famous for saying that he doesn't need to know how any of it works, so long as he can describe what he wants to the people behind the camera, the edit, the music, etc. While yes, it helps to understand how these things work, he is correct in saying that the main job of a director is to outline a vision. You can have good cinematography and good editing, but the combination of the two might ruin the experience. If it takes a long time to absorb the detail of a shot, maybe the actor's making very subtle facial expressions, or there's just a lot going on, it's no use having intense editing because you won't be able to grasp the implications of what just happened and it leaves you confused. This is something that Rush does very well. Its editing is snappy and fast, but its shots are simple and easy to take in. The editing and cinematography work in tandem with each other, and that is due to how Ron Howard made decisions while making the film. Aside from visual examples, the same thing applies to the combination of audio and visual. If Rush's aggressive and exciting visuals are layered with a somber piano ballad, no matter how brilliant the music piece is, it just will not work. In saying this, it's the director's job to stand behind the camera and say, okay, film this, stand behind the computer and say, okay, cut these shots together, work with the composer and say, okay, create this atmosphere with the music. People often say something like, Wes Anderson's visuals are painterly, and while yes, a lot of the credit should go to Anderson for his vision in curating scenes with such massive attention to visual detail, he didn't look through the lens of the camera and press record, or build the sets, or do Ray Fiennes' hair. He simply described what he wanted and then decided if it was good enough. Before I continue with the Wes Anderson example, I also want to add that the director can alter dialogue and story while shooting a movie to suit their idea of what the film is and to make the story work better with how they are going to film it or edit it or score it. This is another example of how directors are provided with the basis and the tools to create something, but don't necessarily create it themselves. It is only up to them to utilize these tools to tell a story that is consistent across all aspects of the film. Wes Anderson is my example for how, despite not being a person who does each job, a director can still cultivate a style and be an auteur. For a lot of directors, this comes from working with the same people on most of their films, and over time they develop the ability to communicate more detail to each other. Robert Yalman and Wes Anderson are a fantastic example of this. They've worked together on, as far as I'm aware, every one of Wes Anderson's movies, and you can see Yalman's cinematography evolve over time. I personally think Yalman got used to his job as a cinematographer faster than Anderson got used to his job as a director, because one of the first parts of Anderson's style to become apparent in his movies is the cinematography. The symmetry and other things start appearing in Rushmore, where other hallmarks of Anderson's style don't become apparent until movies like The Royal Tenenbaums and The Life Aquatic. Yalman could interpret Anderson's vision more efficiently than others who worked on his early projects, and that's a sign of Yalman's talent as opposed to Anderson's. And don't interpret that as a negative comment towards Anderson, because he quickly followed suit in being able to more efficiently communicate his vision and become much more nuanced in his portrayal of his style. And this is something that's very apparent in The Grand Budapest Hotel. The Grand Budapest Hotel has the best visuals of any Anderson movie for me, and it's because he could not only communicate what he intended the film to look like to Yalman, but to his art department and his editors and everyone else. For Anderson's vision to work, he needs to be able to communicate each individual aspect to each department, as well as be able to have a vision that is coherent across all departments. The cohesiveness between different aspects of his films is something that Anderson has gotten better at as his career has continued, and it's the deciding factor in how distinctive his style is. For the next bit, I'm going to talk about Denis Villeneuve and how his influence on S&D is a fantastic example of altering the intricacies of a directorial style to create a film that is very clearly made by Villeneuve but functions in a different genre to the other things that he has made. Villeneuve is known for his long takes and either slow-moving or totally still cinematography. It's one of the key elements in how tense his films are, in addition to their haunting scores. The decision that he makes in S&D is to remove the slow-moving cinematography and focus the editing on characters rather than other elements of the environment. So now the film is presenting an atmosphere of emotion and intimacy, but still retains the hallmarks of Villeneuve's style. His normal style could be used in Essendi, and I would say that the cinematography, editing, and music aren't very good, but that would be no fault of the director of photography, editor, or composer, because each of these people did their role very well. The fault would then be at the feet of the director for not understanding what was required of these three things to make the movie work. Villeneuve is someone who understands this very well, and seeing how he worked that into what he normally does with a film is fantastic. To summarize what I think about a director's role in a movie, I will link back to the conversation my friend and I had about the Oscars. What I said back then is something I still believe. If you think a movie is deserving of Best Picture in a year, then you inherently think the person who directed that movie is the best director of that year. I'll also clarify that I don't think that the worst movie of the year correlates directly with the worst director of the year in the same way. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, people just will not receive your vision, and that is a factor in why bad movies are made. It's different with good movies because there is no way to bring all the aspects of a movie together to a coherent final product without the influence of a director, and that is their job.